We're less than 10 days till the draft now. And you know what? Who better to talk to? Because when it comes to all things Patriots, all things Bears, especially from the Windy City Gridiron, it is my good friend Khari Thompson. But before we get into anything else, I think we got to talk about this crazy announcement that what are the Giants up to? Because it was announced just about an hour ago. They're going to Boulder for a private workout this Thursday. So that really throws a monkey wrench into the plans for what can happen.
Yeah, and listen, I think this is where things start to get really interesting
Yeah.
because I think in a logical world, and so you mentioned right to go into Boulder to go and do a private workout with Shador Sanders, the quarterback from Colorado,
Yes.
and I think that in a logical world, you're not taking Shador Sanders at number 3 overall. And I'm not, listen, I actually feel like Shador Sanders gets a worse rap than he ought to. I feel like there are a lot of people that want to talk down about him.
Yeah.
They without explicitly saying it, it's because they're tired of hearing about him, and because he's Deion's kid and he's too cocky, he's too this, he's too that. He doesn't have a great arm. It's like, man, plenty of successful quarterbacks don't have great arms. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's about the other stuff, right? Like, obviously you talk about what's between the ears, processing, leadership qualities, the accuracy. Like Shador's a very accurate quarterback,
Yep.
etc. But the knock on him is, okay, how much of that is, can he really operate an NFL offense when more than like half his pass attempts were like behind the line of scrimmage or whatever it was? I can't remember the exact number, but like a significant amount of his passing attempts are at or behind the line of scrimmage. Then again, you also look at it, it's like, okay, look at the quarterbacks that, or like look at the playmakers they had. They had freaking Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn Jr. They had a bunch of nice wide receivers, especially for like, that level of college football, right? For that conference. So it's like,
Yep.
yeah, get the hands of your playmakers and let them do their thing. I think on tape, you can see Shador Sanders making NFL throws. I think he has NFL arm strength. Is it Josh Allen? No, of course not. There are like 3 guys in the NFL that you could even potentially put in that tier, right? And but I feel like we get too caught up in that. It's like, does he have an elite arm? No. Does he have an NFL arm? Yeah, I think so. But I think when you look at the top 4, and which is why I think the Patriots are just in the most interesting position
Yeah.
in the draft, because there's so many different ways that number 4 overall pick can go. And I would not take Shador Sanders number 3 overall in a vacuum. But this is not a vacuum.
No.
Okay, you always have to keep that in mind. Like, I'm not about drafting for purely for need and things like that. But especially with the quarterback position, sometimes that's just what happens. We need a quarterback, and let's be real. Do we want to get stuck drafting Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe? Which again, I don't hate Jalen Milroe. There's upside there, but I just don't know that he's ever going to be an elite NFL quarterback. But that's what you're talking about. To me personally, I'm like, don't listen to these people who are like, oh yeah, Jackson Dart. Come on, bro. Like that's me personally.
Yeah.
But I think that the best 2 the best 2 quarterbacks in the draft are Cam Ward and Shador Sanders, in my opinion.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I was going to say I share the same mindset as you. Cam's going number 1. We all know that already. It was weird. They also released, I guess, there's only 17 guys that are going to be in Green Bay, and Jackson is one of them. Jackson Dart will be in Green Bay on draft night.
Yeah.
But no, something that just came to my head as you're saying this though. What if the Giants are doing this to kind of lead other teams on, where it's like, oh, like, do the Giants see something we don't? And it makes teams like, overthink and all this other stuff, to where then it's like, oh, we got to move up. Do we got to go trade something for the Giants to get a haul to then move back and maybe get someone else a little bit later on they think that might be there?
Yeah.
Kind of like what they did with the Bears and Justin Fields. Not to that extent, but you know what I mean, though, where it's like, hey, you get like I think New Orleans is the team for Shador at this point if he doesn't go to the Giants. I think
Listen,
it's the Saints.
I talked to people at the combine, and this wasn't even just, this was before Derek Carr in the
Yeah.
shoulder injury, right? Before we knew that he might not be able to play in 2025 or his availability was going to be compromised. Where I was talking to guys from New Orleans who were like, I think they're a sneaky candidate to move up to number 9. Because look, what have we seen with quarterback situations? Like, just because somebody has an expensive quarterback does not mean that you can't draft one. We saw this last year with the Falcons spending all that money on Kirk, which, again, not a great contract and all that, but you go ahead and you draft Michael Penix Jr., and then they're going to be able to trade Kirk at somebody's going to take him. He's not going to be there all year. And then, you drafted Michael Penix, and you're like, yo, this guy's nice. Like, he might kind of be it. Like, we want to rock with him. Or Cleveland Browns, another team, right? I don't think they're going to take Shedeur. I don't. No. But the fact that they have Deshaun Watson, that doesn't matter at all, right? Honestly, it doesn't matter who they got, right? And you, whether you have a veteran or not, drafting a rookie quarterback is basically always a good idea if you're not sure about the quarterback position.
Yeah, because like even now, if you look at a team like New England and all the money spending they've done, like what the Bears just did too, with being able to spend money, like what Houston did last year, spending the money. Because as soon as they were like, "Oh, we're giving Danielle Hunter a bag," there was a couple other guys in there. I'm like, "Hey, do this while you can," but also for them too, paying Diggs last year, to which New England just paid Diggs this year. Pay them now because you want that problem in 2 to 3 years, like the Texans are going to face next year. When you got to give C.J. Stroud probably somewhere in the $50 million range. Drake May, hopefully it's the same thing. So that's where I completely agree with you, where, hey, if the Cards are right to draft a rookie, go ahead. Cleveland, though, I would say this. I feel like they're better off maybe waiting until the second or third round to take a Will Howard project because, if it doesn't work out, it is what it is. And you can always just get a first rounder next year, kind of like what the Titans are about to do. But look, I completely agree with you because the Saints, too, they're the team as well. You get a rookie quarterback under contract under team control for 3 to 4 years, it helps alleviate your cap problems. Meanwhile, with the Kirk Cousins one and Michael Penix in Atlanta, I think he's going to be one of those quarterbacks this year that no one really talks about, but then sometime in September, everyone's going to be coming and going like, oh, why weren't we talking about Michael Penix back in like June, July, or August? I actually really agree with you. I think he's going to be a really nice quarterback for that Atlanta team to hopefully maybe win them an NFC South title.
And again, the NFC South so often is open. And I think that, that division, like on paper, the Falcons should have been a team that was winning that division last year, but Kirk is washed, or rather whether he was washed or whether he just, needed a little bit more time coming back from that Achilles or what have you. He wasn't it. Right.
Yeah.
He had his one good game and then that was a wrap. So I think that if Penix is good and you're able to load up, you might be in a good position for that division because that it's not particularly strong.
Nope.
And I think that's the thing that we said about the AFC South for a while, but now I think Houston, even with CJ Stroud not being that great last year, is still a really good team. They're a tough out. Like they are going to consistently, as long as Stroud just doesn't fall off a cliff, like they're going to be there kind of at that point for a little bit. The Patriots are really interesting here because I feel like I was a bit surprised that and I think they improved in free agency for sure. I was a little surprised that they didn't make bigger moves to try and really, get it, with Drake May right now. Because I think after watching him last year, I'm pretty convinced he's that dude.
Yeah.
That said, swooping in at the last minute and grabbing Stephon Diggs, and if he's healthy, that could be the steal of the year. If he really comes in and is healthy and is anything approximating what he had been over the past couple before he had gotten hurt. So that could be a bargain move that pays off. And then all of a sudden you're in Drake May's third year ready to go nuts. I think there was a little bit of a both sides sort of play in the fence kind of thing with the Patriots, where it's like, hey, look, this is the first year with Mike Vrabel. We've got to reestablish culture. We got to reestablish how we do
Yep.
things. And it's like we still got to prove it a little bit more, because I think that's the thing to keep in mind, is that it's still free agency, especially, is a two-way street. And I think trades are more and more becoming a two-way street as well. Like DK Metcalf made it very clear he did not want to come to New England, right? And that, which is a big deal, because it's like if he says he's not coming to New England, he has a certain amount of leverage because he got to sign a contract extension, right? So if he's not going to sign here, he's not going to be here long term, then what are you traded that for, right? Nope. What are you doing that for? So I think that it's a two-way street, and I feel like the Patriots are in a spot where they need to prove it a little bit more than I think maybe I had even thought, because I'm looking at like, yo, people are going to see this Drake May and they're going to be like, and they're going to look at Mike Vrabel and be like, yeah, we heard good things about him. But the results have been pretty mid for the Patriots. I think that this year, though, if Drake May is what I think he's going to be, this is going to be a spot where you could call Taxachusetts, whatever thing you could draw up for why people don't want to come here. I think they're going to be like, no, I want to go play with that.
Exactly. Another thing too, I learned this at the same time as you, who DK Metcalf's girlfriend is, former Fifth Army lead singer Normani. I didn't know that either until I saw your tweet about it, being like, crazy. I did not know this. Yeah. But no, I completely agree with you there. The NFC South, I'll be honest with you, I'm not ready to say this team's going to be good, but I'm liking what I'm seeing from Carolina in the sense of like, I see the vision. It's still a few years away, but like I see what you're doing and I appreciate it. The AFC South, just because I wanted to touch on it, I think is the weirder division, because
so weird.
Look, if Nico Collins gets hurt, that team's in trouble, because McGarvin and I coined this phrase, but he's CJ's emotional support wide receiver, where it's like we saw it last year. When Collins was hurt, Stroud's production went down. Jacksonville, I think, will rebound, but I don't know to what extent yet, just because this is a make or break year for Trevor Lawrence. I'm not afraid to say that. And then the Colts,
it's kind of been like that for him.
Yeah,
I feel like I've been very underwhelmed by Trevor, which it's a lesson to everybody that
not
you can't just call people. Well, you can't just call people generational.
Yeah.
There are very few actually generational prospects. Now, to be fair, I think that when you looked at his college profile and the games that he had very few bad games. Most of it was pretty clean. But I think that as a quarterback prospect, he might have gotten just overhyped a bit. I don't think he's bad, right? No. I think some of those are like, okay, yeah, that's a damn good quarterback, but it's not very consistent. It feels like he has been, sort of damaged goods a little out there because of just all the turmoil that he's had to endure. But yeah, I think it's just unfortunate, because that 2021 class, I think we looked at it like it was going to be better. I think we expected it to at least be Trevor Lawrence hitting. And yeah, he got paid, but it's one of those situations where it feels like, yeah, he got paid, but it doesn't feel like they hit, which is a rough spot to be in. And again, when you talk about generational quarterbacks, Andrew Luck, there's a reason like he's the last one, and there's a reason they were talking about him like that. And yeah, he didn't end up winning anything, but that wasn't his fault. You watched him, he was out there balling. Like there was no doubt about how wild that dude was when he was on the field. And I just feel like
he couldn't beat Tom Brady.
We're always looking for the next guy that we can tab with that label. And right now it's Caleb Williams, right? Generational, can't miss, unbelievable talent, next Patrick Mahomes, blah, 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 right? And they weren't even talking about Pat when he was coming out like that. They were not talking about Mahomes like that. He became that, partly due to the situation. But I think it's a misfortune when people start talking about guys like that, because there are really only there are a handful or two quarterback prospects that have ever come out that deserve that label, ever in the history of the NFL. Trevor Lawrence ain't that. And that doesn't mean he sucks.
Nope.
It doesn't. It doesn't mean that he sucks. It just means he's not the prince that was promised.
The make or break thing for me is more if he makes it and then enters that like top 12 realm of quarterback, or if he's just going to be that middle pack, like Kirk Cousins career arc kind of quarterback.
Yeah, I think that more than likely at this point in his career, it's gonna be that. Yeah, like a fringe top 10 guy. He's gonna be a good player. You might get people talking a little wild every now and again, but I mean the top 5, or at least like the top 3 of the quarterbacking world is pretty much set right now. You're not breaking into that anytime soon. It is Pat, it is Lamar, it is Josh. That there you go. And Joe Burrow in somewhere in that top 4. There you go. That's what you got.
There is so a couple things I'm gonna say about that. One, I'm interested to see because Pat Mahomes got that Khari Thompson hairstyle going now. He cut the fro off. He's doing the short hair. He's doing the short hair with the fade on the side. So that's gonna be interesting to see what that Pat plays like. But the other guy, I don't want to say top 5, but I feel like another quarterback that just constantly gets scrutinized, but I feel like he wouldn't if he was if he was on the team he's not. I still say that about Dak. I feel like just because he's in Dallas, he's always like, his mistakes get glorified more than what he can do well. Because, like when you're playing in Dallas, you have that expectation. I do want to go back, though, to your take about Caleb Williams early generational, because there was another prospect from last year's draft that was, the best NFL ready player, best player in the draft. Didn't have the best rookie season because there was a couple other players in his position. And everyone's saying, was he a bust? And I'm like, guys, it's year one. Relax. That's Marvin Harrison Jr. He's going to be a fine NFLer, but like FanDuel, I think they do it for clicks. It's like already people saying, what's this team's record? It was like, how do the Giants win the NFC East? It's like, is Marvin Harrison this? I'm like, okay, we understand Neighbors and Thomas Jr. were like Thomas Jr. I feel like we can't be understated how great his rookie year was, especially with the Trevor Lawrence stuff. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a fine NFLer. I just feel like the whole tags with generational doesn't even come from like draft scouts and like, the Daniel Jeremiahs and the Bucky Brookses of the world and the Mel Kipers. I think it's more from the people who look, they'll have tabs during the college season on prospects, but then it's like from pretty much the Super Bowl to now, and especially gets at the combine where everyone's like, this guy's this, I watched this film and he's generational. I feel like it's the NFL analyst who acts like a draft analyst for like 8 weeks out of 52 of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think for a lot of us, we kind of have that tendency, right? We want to jump in and be like, yeah, I'm a tape grinder now, and I think that it's just always best to be measured about it. That's a great point about Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah,
and I think that it's so wild to even think about that, right? Because people are gonna be like, yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. is like the best, wide receiver prospect come out since this guy or like whatever. And it's like can't miss prospect. And then Jeremiah Smith is going to come into the league in 2 years.
Oh my God.
And everybody's just
Ryan
like,
Williams.
yeah, for everybody who missed Julio Jones coming out, that's it. And I'm just like, yeah, this guy's insane, but like that's
quiet retirement, by the way, for Julio Jones this year. I don't think it was really picked up that much.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the way that he always was. He was never a big talker. He was just a guy who would go out and just give you 100 every game. Like he was just gonna put it on you if you were a DB, and he wasn't gonna say nothing. He was just gonna beat your ass. And I think that's the way that he does, and I respect that. I respect the hell out of that. No retirement tour, like I'm just done. I was even thinking about Calvin Johnson a couple of years ago, where he just I'm out after what?
You'll probably get the same for Mike too.
It's like after like 7-8 years of just going ham on the league, and he's just like, yeah, I'm done, bro. Like my fingers are all messed up. I'm tired of losing all the time, and he just dipped.
The Irish goodbyes of retirement. It's like, yep, I'm out. Like Mike Evans is going to do the same thing too. Like I feel like people are finally catching on where it's like, oh, this guy cooked. Like Julio too had one of the greatest catches no one ever talks about, which I'm not mad about, but.
I mean, I remember watching that game. I mean, I was just stunned entirely at that game, and all of us were, right? But my God, like they're so like that's in a pantheon of catches where like I think about Santonio. No, yeah, it was
Yeah, Santonio in
Santonio
43,
Holmes in the Super Bowl.
the tiptoe in the
Where
corner.
you're just like, oh my god, like it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like literally the kind of thing where like who's making that play, except for like that guy, and it just Julio was he was a work of art, and that little bit of time where Matt Ryan was out there cooking before his arm fell off. Um, that was nice because it was just like literally he'd be like, screw it, man, Julio down there somewhere. Like he's gonna win, might as well. But I think to kind of get back to the present day, right? Um, you mentioned it, and I agree with you. It's like there was all this talk about Titans, what are they gonna do? It's like, come on, bro.
Once they brought their production team to Cam Ward's pro day, you knew it was a
It's
wrap.
like,
It was over.
we know what you're going to do. Don't try to convince us about Will Levis nothing. We know he's not it. Like, go ahead and just take your Cam Ward. I like it. I don't think I like him more than other people do because I think they see the goofy throwing motion or kind of like the kind of three quarters or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's not going to play. I'm like, watch the way that he actually plays.
Yeah.
And I think that he makes NFL throws. He's honestly hilariously unbothered in the pocket, which I think is sometimes a little too much. Like, okay, Cam, like, I know that you're bored back there because you're not playing a real challenge, but you do need to do a little bit more with your footwork here. Like you should probably step into that throw a little. But I think those are things that are coachable. It's not like those are detrimental flaws. Like the guy can ball.
Yeah.
And then I think that really what it comes down to is those next two picks should be some combination of Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. They just should. Like, and I think if it doesn't happen, I'm like, you know what? Okay, Giants, good on you. I know you said you needed a quarterback, and I'll say this about Shedeur Sanders. I feel like if there is a quarterback that belongs in New York, it's that guy. I think he'll be able to stand up to it. And that's something that you should keep in mind. Not everybody's cut out for playing in New York. Shedeur Sanders can play in New York. He's got thick enough skin. He's got enough confidence. He's got a good support system and all that. But I think that the reality is that you are probably going to look at a scenario where you got to hope somebody wants to trade up for Shedeur at number 4 overall. And I don't know that that's going to happen. I liked your point earlier about the Giants maybe trying to like stoke a little bit of like, hey, you never know, maybe I'll take
little gas on the fire, a little gas.
Yeah, maybe I'll take them. I think there are going to be teams that are they're. Here's the thing: you always got to be careful because it is definitely lying season right now. So you got to be like, we're not really trying to trade up for
season.
Shedeur. Yeah, we're not trying to trade up for Shedeur, which I think most teams probably I can get that, but it's like Saints. Quit acting like you wouldn't potentially do it. We know you're lying. We know you might want to do it. Then it becomes if you don't do that and nobody's trading up, what do you do at number 4? I don't love it. I gotta say I don't love it. I know what they probably would do, which is take Will Campbell. I'm not gonna lie, don't love it.
So there's him, and then there's the lineman from I believe Missouri. I know his name is really hard to pronounce.
Membo, yeah,
Membo. But there's him. There's one of those two guys, and then there's my other plan B that McGarvin got me on, which is them to trade 38 back up into the first round and get Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. That's the wide receiver who I think might end up being one of the better ones from the draft. Look, I think regardless of what New England does, it's going to be pissed off because half the fan base has become extremely fickle ever since Tom left 5 years ago, where you get people like there's going to be someone out there like if they take Will Campbell, it's going to be like, we got the left tackle. Yay. That's like my thing too, where I'm just like, look, because it's going to be a lot like what the Chargers did last year. Everyone's like, they need a wide receiver. Why do you go Joe Alt? And right away, I'm like, oh, that's a pick. That's Jim Harbaugh. And like they're taking guys like that. Like, I think there's going to be some weird names, but Vrabel sees them as, oh, that's a guy I can make a clone into me. He's a guy that's going to go out there and, rip someone's head off. There's like that element to it as well later. Like, I don't know about like if they go the Will Campbell route, but then look, I think if the Giants do something goofy at 3, or because I still think this is going to happen. I think it goes Cam Ward 1. I think it goes Hunter 2 because Cleveland needs offense more than defense. But the fun one for me is if the Giants go Carter at 3, where does that leave Kayvon Thibodeau? Because he needs a new contract soon. He's eligible for a deal. And they just took him with 5 a few years ago. So I'm thinking about it. I think I know everyone's like, you need this amount of linemen, but if you have, because here's the thing, and everyone's saying, oh, they can just pay more. They're already giving Brian Burns a lot of money. They're giving Andrew Thomas a lot of money. Dexter Lawrence is one of the more underrated defensive tackles in all of football, underrated D lineman of football. What are you doing? What does that say for Thibodeau if you're bringing in Carter? I think that kind of means like, when Chandler Jones and the Tyree Wilson situation, although I don't see, hopefully, Kayvon Thibodeau going the Chandler Jones route for obvious reasons. If you know, you know. But look, if they go Sanders at 3, or if we hear that we've got a trade to announce, that's where the dam really falls. I don't think they trade at 3. I think if anything, there's Elliott Wolf calling a team trying to say like, hey, do you want to do this? I even said too, like Vegas is right there for the trading block as well. I know they have Geno Smith, but I'm pretty sure that deal is year to year, or there's like very ways to get out of it. But crazier things have happened on draft night. But right now, my pick at number 4, if it goes the way it is like, look, Abdul Carter would be the dream. But I think for right now, it's either Membu or Campbell. I think that's what you go with, unless they feel like they can get it later on. Because I feel like even to Kelvin Banks' name has always been floated up there. It was like, he's going to be top 5. And now I feel like it's just, oh, he's going to be somewhere littered in the first round.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting because I actually, I can't remember who I told this, but my thought was I would, if you're going off pure traits, I would definitely take Membo over Campbell. I know that people are like, yeah, well, his arms measured 38, or rather, they measured 33 inches at his pro day. Everything's great. His wingspan is still hilarious. His wingspan is still T-Rex level, right? And I think that matters, right? Because great, his arms can extend out this way, but there's no coverage out here, right? He's got like a narrower frame than you would expect for a tackle, and I think that's one thing that he mentioned. And everybody talking about, oh yeah, well, Mike Vrabel drafted Peter Skoronski, to play tackle. Like, he didn't care, about his short arms. It's like, yeah, how many games has Peter Skoronski played at tackle in the NFL so far?
Not a lot. He got kicked into guard.
No, 0.
Yeah,
literally
exactly.
none. Like, he's never played tackle in the NFL. And again, I know his measurements were more extreme than Campbell's. I'm just saying, look, when it comes to, I get it. People like his tape and they think he's good and he's athletic. These are true things. I think he's a good player. He's very athletic. And I think that helps to mitigate some of those issues. I think that he has to be a freaking unicorn to be worth it at number 4 overall. That's my personal.
Yeah.
To be an all-pro tackle perennially, I think he's got to be a freaking unicorn. And I just don't know that is. Now, at the same time, he's a left tackle, and Membo has been a right tackle. He's never been a left tackle. That said, to me, that doesn't mean he can't play left tackle. It doesn't mean that to me. But I know that some people are like, yeah, can he learn how to move over there? We'd rather have the natural left tackle.
I think at the end of the day, it really is one of 2 ways. Just because, like, when you look at the Patriots line right now, look, David Andrews, like, I never thought he was going to be on the line in 2025. I think that's another one too, where it's released, but it's going to be like a quiet retirement where he doesn't he's just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm done. I'm here. I'm out. So center right now is Garrett Bradbury, Michael Onwenu and Morgan Moses on the right side of the line is fine. But the big question too is then like, where does like the Caden Wallace effect come into play? Where does Layden Robinson come into play? There's still a lot of questions to be answered about this O-line. And I know there's Meridian Low, but he's a swing tackle. He's not needed to be a starting tackle in this economy in the year of our Lord 2025. But no, I think it's just they're going to make the right decision for the team. But at the end of the day, people are going to be annoyed and bothered by it because that's just what Patriots Twitter does nowadays. And you kind of let the cookie crumble where the cookie crumbles. But you can't make everyone happy. And you have to remember too, these guys know football. So I'll take what they do. Like, because here's the other thing with drafts too. I hate when people right away are like, this class is a C+. And I'm like, they just got drafted. You're doing this off potential.
Like, they haven't played.
You have to wait 3 years. That's why I do the 3-year rule. You have to wait till after the third season to judge. You can't just go and say this. You can say they had a great draft. Sure, they got all the guys off potential, but you can't go because if a team takes 7 or 8 guys, at least 2 of them aren't going to be in the league longer than 2 seasons, maybe even 3 seasons, you know?
Yeah.
And going on now, I just want to segue because one team who got their roses by upgrading their offensive line, your Chicago Bears, Joe Tooney, Darnell Wright, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson. Help me out, God, who is playing right tackle for the Chicago Bears this year?
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright. So my bad. Darnell Wright at right tackle, Joe Tooney at left guard. Left tackle is the one that I'm blanking on. But
well, so that's Braxton Jones. Braxton Jones is currently injured, and
yes,
his status, from what I've heard, is kind of iffy.
Did you like the Kyler Gordon contract, by the way?
I do, and I liked Kyler Gordon when they picked him. Honestly, I wanted the Patriots to get him back then. I'm not gonna lie, because I think people got caught up on the fact like maybe he's a nickel cornerback in the NFL, but when you watched him on tape, he just does everything, right? He could play the ball. You can play him as like a big slot kind of corner, which is essentially what he is, right? A big nickel corner, and he's just big, tough. He lays the boom. Like you could use him everywhere in any way that you want. And he's very, very flexible, very versatile. His thing was that he struggled with injuries. His first year didn't quite get as much shine. But he's since gotten healthier and gotten a chance to show what he can do. When he's on the field, he's nice. So I like that. And I actually look at that as a win for Ryan Poles in a number of ways. Because I was one of those people that was like, look, man, this Matt Eberflus situation and the fact that they only won 5 games last year, like that's on Ryan Poles. And I feel like it would make sense to fire him. He had enough feathers in his cap, though, including Kyler Gordon, which was actually his first ever draft pick. Fun fact, at number 39 overall, because that was after the year after the Justin Fields pick. So they had traded away, that first round pick that year. So their first pick that year was Kyler Gordon, and he panned out. He has continued to get better. He's now the highest paid nickel corner in the league, and he deserves it. So I think, Poles is one of those guys that when you look at 15 wins in 3 years for a general manager, that is often the kind of resume that'll get you fired. In addition to the dysfunction that I think the Bears went through during his tenure. That said, I think there's enough. The Bears decided there was enough there to be like, we got to see this vision through to the end. We got Caleb Williams. We got the quarterback that I think is going to take us where we want to go. Sell us on Ben Johnson, and we're cooking. Revamp the offensive line, and we're cooking. And I think on paper, you're looking at like the defense, like the defense could still use a little bit more upfront to me, which is why I think that number 10 overall pick they have, there's a very good chance that could be an edge. Very curious to see what they think about it. At the same time, they do need a left tackle. And if there is a tackle right there, whether it's Campbell, if he ended up falling, which I don't think he's going to do, I think the Patriots will probably take him at number 4 before he falls to number 10. But if Membo is there or what have you, I think that's something you got to consider as well. But I think that they have done so much to, I think, raise the floor of their team this year and do, kind of what they need to with same as for Drake May, though I think the Patriots have way more work to do on the offensive line, but to just raise the floor enough to let their young quarterbacks develop more in peace. Right. Yeah. So I think the Bears, I was bullish on them last year. I'm not going to make the same mistake this year. I'm like, okay, y'all got to show me. Right. I'm not going to pencil you in for more than 7 wins until you show me you deserve it and watch the win 11 this year, because this was the one year that I decided to chill. But I think you got to give Ryan Poles his flowers for this one. On paper, he's doing his job. Now it's all about how the ingredients come together.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love what he did with the offensive line. I like the fact they got guys like Drew Dahlman by saying like, yeah, I want to be here. The other pick I'm intrigued by too, I'm blanking on his name, and it's also very hard to pronounce, but the edge they got from Chicago, from the Colts. My bad.
Oh, Darrow. I can't remember.
Darrow, or I thought it was Ojabo, but that's the defensive end who's on the Ravens right now out of Michigan.
David Ojabo. So that was a couple of years ago? Was that 2 years ago that they picked him?
22, I think.
Yeah, he was hurt. He was hurt that year.
Yeah,
Um,
but
but yeah. So the Bears did get. It's just funny because they've had a couple of Colts edge rushers. Hopefully this one works as a Dio.
Dio, that's it.
Yeah, Dio Odeyingbo.
Yes, that's it. But like I give Poles the flowers too, just because of what he's gone out and done. I also have said this on the show before, but I think there's a future head coach on their coaching staff right now as well in Antoine Randall, because I've just seen some of the stuff like behind the scenes stuff. He
Yeah,
seems like that kind of guy that players get up for, and when I see that, I'm like, I think this guy could be a head coach one day in the league. But you know what? The Bears right now, they're doing all the right things. I'm still bullish on them in the sense though, because last year how hyped up they were and it went 5-12. So
yep.
right now I'm in that boat of if they can be in the hunt, competing for a wild card spot, like win anywhere from 7 to 10 games. I think they have a chance, especially doing an NFC North that look, I'm not saying there's a lot in question, but like Green Bay and Minnesota, I don't really know what we're going to get at the moment just because, well, for one team, we don't know who's going to be the quarterback. That's just for everyone saying, oh, like they have McCarthy. Sure, Aaron Rodgers is still lurking, and I think he wants to go there. Green,
He's gonna complete the Brett Favre arc.
I swear to God, if he does. But like they're not going to like the regardless of who's quarterback, they're not going 14-3 again. I just don't think that's going to happen. I could see them going like I could see them going like 10-7 or 9-8, and people are going to be like, "This team's bad," and I'm like, "No, they're just going to probably lose a couple games that they won last year that had Cam Bynum doing those Camp Rock dances and High School Musical stuff after getting interceptions, and which he'll be doing on the Colts now." The Lions are another intriguing one, just because it's not so much have they been figured out, but I'm not bullish on the Lions, but I'm still waiting for that. Like, are they in that Bills territory where it's like, okay, you're putting it all together, but when are you going to get to a Super Bowl? Eventually, when is it just, oh, hey, winning the division and hosting a playoff game ain't cutting it? Because especially after the way they went out last year, because that wasn't pretty. The way that Jaden Daniels just sunned them on that Saturday night.
I feel like I don't know. I this is going to be a really telling year because I think the Dan Campbell, sort of.
Honeymoon?
Yeah, I think this is probably the year that the bloom comes off that rose without Ben Johnson, or rather, it's going to be a make or break sort of year.
Yeah.
And I think here's the thing: Dan Campbell, I think, knew as well as anyone a couple of years ago when the Lions fell short in the NFC Championship game. I think he even said it, right? Like that window can close so fast. This might have been the one shot we had, and we didn't get there.
Yeah.
And then obviously last year, Jaden Daniels just putting it on him, right? That was probably their time. And again,
Yeah.
the Bears are down, and if the Bears come up, this has the potential to be the Bears division for a minute if Caleb Williams is actually good, which we'll see. But I think it's interesting you bring that up, right? Because I feel like people are like, yeah, we'll see how Jaden Daniels does in year 2. It's like, what makes you think that Jaden Daniels won't be good in year 2? Like, what are you going to do to game plan for that?
Because like when you literally look at, like, and by the way, when I say the
Like,
Lions,
it
I'm
looked
not.
easy for him.
Yeah, that's the thing, and he's also too got like it. And it's not like they got worse. Like I think their biggest loss offensively was like Amanias Zacchaeus, who ironically went to your Chicago
Went to the
Bears.
Bears, yeah.
Yeah, which he'll be a nice depth piece to add on receiver there. But with the and I also want to say this to the Lions. So I'm not here calling for Dan Campbell's job. I'm just kind of saying when eventually do we see Pat? And I'm not trying to discredit him. I love him. I love the energy he brings. But eventually, I feel like people have to realize, oh, he was brought to Detroit to turn it around. And like, hey, you're a competitive team, but we see in the NFL that only gets you so far. That's gotten coaches fired for just doing things. If you want to see proof, the Bears fired Lovie Smith after going 10-6. What was that? 10 plus? That was like 12 years ago now.
It's just 2012. Yeah.
20. Yeah.
So, which I mean, I think you look at that and say, I think a lot of us at the time said it was time. That
Yep.
made sense in a way because they weren't getting over that hump. They hadn't made it back to a Super Bowl. It's just funny to bring that up in context of everything that's happened since then, because
It ain't been pretty.
I think they have had one winning season since. Just one.
And they almost beat Tom Brady, but Kevin White didn't know how to get his feet into the end zone properly.
Well, okay. Honestly, though, that's not even entirely well. Okay, maybe it was. Maybe it is a Hail Mary that he caught at the one. Like it is what it is, right? You know,
the
I can't hate on him for that.
No, the course of history I just like to think of is not so much like because I know everyone likes to make fun of the double doink, but the course of history if that kick goes in, because if that kick goes in, it'd be Bears. It would be the Bears, I believe, playing the Rams and the Saints playing the Cowboys, which
And the
do
Bears had already absolutely murdered Jared Goff earlier in that year. Like they had humiliated that poor dude. I was actually in Mexico watching that game. That was funny. But like that was the thing, man. Like I have a thing about once in every 15 years kinds of defenses
yeah.
where like 85 Bears, 2000 Ravens, 2015 Broncos, the Bears really could have jumped in and threw a wrench into that and taken them to the Super Bowl and led that team because the offense wasn't that good. And that year, I don't even think it was necessarily Matt Nagy's fault. I think it was just we didn't realize that Mitchell Trubisky sucked yet. Um,
Oh my god! And also,
um,
fun little. There's one player that played on one of those defenses and the 2018 Bears, I believe, and that's Danny Trevathan. No,
Danny Trevathan, yep.
yeah.
And
Very
that
underappreciated
year,
linebacker in his time.
I think so. Yeah, and he struggled with some injuries toward the end, but I think like especially with the Bears, right? They had like 36 takeaways that year. Like they were just suffocating people. It was insane. But again, like you give up a touchdown at the wrong time to Nick Foles in the playoffs, and then it's like, yeah, we gotta trust Mitchell Trubisky and Cody Parkey to get the job done. And you're like, yeah, I don't love our chances.
And then the next week, Alshon Jeffrey didn't remember how to catch a football, went right through his hands to Marshawn Lattimore's, and off the Saints went to the NFC Championship game.
It'd be like
Yeah, but no, the end, like, because when and everyone says like the Bears comment, the Jaden Daniels comment. How many teams can you shoe in to make the playoffs right now? I would say probably the Lions, the Commanders, the Eagles, and the Rams.
that.
Because
Maybe I don't think the Rams though. I
oh,
don't know. I feel like yeah. I think it's I'm not trying to count out Matthew Stafford because I think that every time you do that, he finds a way to pull it off.
yeah,
But I'm not. Yeah, I don't know that I'm there with the Rams. I feel like there's a chance that they could miss the playoffs this year. But
their
yeah, I think
division's goofy. Their division is just straight up
so
goofy.
goofy. Like this could think about it. This could be the year that the Cardinals like finally got it together and like made the playoffs or whatever. Or like this could be the year that the 49ers fall off or whatever.
My take is, by the way, if both those teams don't make the playoffs, I think both those coaches are out. Gannon and Shanahan.
I feel like the Shanahan stuff has been just it's been going for a while now. It's hard to ignore. But yeah, I think that I was thinking to myself like maybe you could pencil Pittsburgh into the playoffs,
Yeah.
right? Just because they're gonna limp in the back door,
Yep.
and
Like
they're gonna get knocked out. It doesn't matter who it is at quarterback, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or whatever. It's like they're gonna get moved out of there
they're gonna
in
go
the
like
first
three and
round
six and
regardless.
finish. Not they're gonna go. They're just gonna start like 3-6 and win like six of
Yeah,
their last 8 and sneak into the playoffs.
right.
But no, when I say that with the NFC West, because like even with Seattle too, like I'm not buying it, but I'm like they're gonna be that flirting team the entire year. They're gonna go like 9-8, and they'll either miss or they'll make. Like I'm not saying they're good, but Mike McDonald's not a bad head coach. I just think with Jonathan Gannon and Kyle, like with Jonathan Gannon, I just think this has got to be there. You got to show something. You can't just embarrassingly bow out for Arizona. I could easily because they're putting the pieces in place. It's just they'll have like a game where they look good, and then they'll have a game where they get their asses kicked. Where it's just like got to find like that middle ground with the two of them. You know?
Yeah, and I think let's see. So let me like pull up the NFL teams right here. Because I gotta see all of them. I'm getting older. It's getting a little hard. It's getting a little harder for me. But yeah, so you know, Bills,
Yeah.
Bills, Eagles. I'm gonna put the commies in there because I feel like they're probably gonna make the playoffs. Ravens. Let's see. yeah, I don't know who the hell from the NFC North is getting in this year. I don't know. It's probably gonna be one of those just like bloodbath kind of deals. I think the yeah, when I look at the AFC South, Texans are getting in. It's just yeah, just by default, right?
Yeah.
Even if CJ Stroud's not good, still getting in. But let me take one team from the NFC North and let's call it the Lions for now.
Yeah.
Why the hell not? They still have a pretty loaded team, even if they don't have Ben Johnson anymore. And then like NFC South, oh, that's a weird one. Oh, that's weird.
I might go Atlanta right now, to be honest with you.
That was my first thought. I feel like I should probably pick the Bucks.
It's
I feel
gonna be
like I
one of the
probably
two.
I feel yeah, it's gonna be one of those two. Feel like I should pick the Bucks. That's what I feel like I should do, but we'll see. Um, and then AFC West. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be the Chiefs, but I feel like let's also. I don't know. I believe in the Broncos like that
I
again.
think
I
they
just
regress a little. I think they do
yeah.
what Houston did last year. They still get in, but they're not going to be. There's going
Yeah.
to be some ugly games, and there's going to be some games where it's like Bo Nix, and there's going to be some games where it's like Bo Nix.
You're like, ooh, Bo Nix. Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think like probably like Chiefs and Chargers getting in out of there, and then yeah, the NFC West is going to be, screw it, maybe the Cardinals, maybe this is their year finally. I don't know, it's just those are a weird division, but yeah, Rams are probably the more likely team. Maybe two teams get in for that. I don't know. It's weird. Okay,
yeah.
I just you can never know what you're going to get out of any of those weird ass teams.
Do you have so there's a couple teams right now. There's one where I'm like, there's two actually that I have in the AFC that are that's like make or break years in my opinion for them, and then there's one in the NFC that I see as like I don't think they're good yet, but I see what they're building and I'm kind of liking it. The make or breaks for me is Cincinnati and Indianapolis because of Cincinnati. Look, I love how they basically went out and were like making videos of everyone saying, we don't pay our guys. And then, hey, look, we paid our guys when it's literally you did the thing you were supposed to do. No one's giving you flowers. That's why everyone was shit talking you. So I seriously think they missed for 3 years in a row. I think Zach Taylor's gone. It's just, you've missed 3 years in a row.
Yeah,
You're
you
supposed to
have to
win.
at that point. Have
Yeah.
to. Um,
Indianapolis, same thing. Like if Anthony Richardson is not their starting quarterback, that is a huge indictment on Shane Steichen, and especially Chris Ballard too, who should have been fired a few years ago. Because I don't know if you know this, they have not won a division title since Chris Ballard's gotten there.
yeah, no, I did know that, and I remember how big a deal it was for a lot of Chicago Bears fans that Chris Ballard didn't get the GM job back when they gave it to Ryan Pace. And I think it's just like weirdly telling to see how that played out. But yeah, I think that I was talking to people at the combine about the Anthony Richardson situation, and that it's probably most likely too late for him, but the talent is just so immense,
Yeah,
and there's really no other real player you would rather have instead of him at this point at quarterback. So I'm kind of just like, you might as well see what you get from there and then reload next year if you suck at
yeah,
quarterback, which is probably going to be a class that people like a little bit better. But yeah, I just, I think their best bet, honestly, is just see if he figures it out. Because I think that through those first few games of his first season, you saw hints of him being kind of nice. And then the injury threw things off, a little bit of immaturity. Because again, what is he? Is he 20? Is he even
tapping the head.
22 now?
I'm
Did
gonna
he,
look that up.
did he turn 22 yet? Like, he's so young.
It's funny when I
I
Google
got, I got
Anthony
yeah.
Rich
So
Rizzle's the first thing that comes up. Come on, internet, come on. I just want to know how old is Anthony?
he
Oh,
was 21 when he came in the league, right? Like,
he will
that's
be
crazy.
20. He'll be 23 on May 22nd.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of talent there, and I feel like you owe it to yourself to see if you can get it out of him. And then if he fails, then you're fired anyway. Who cares?
But I seriously think that's like a total house cleaning. By the way, if you don't see anything from Anthony Richardson and they miss the playoffs, that's a fire him. And then my favorite is then the Patriots trade for Michael Pittman Jr. because I've always wanted,
Mm.
he's always been one of my favorite players. And then the AFC East, before I wrap up and just go back to the Bears, I'll say this. Look, Dolphins, Tua's got to stay healthy. Tua stays healthy, but they've got bigger fish to fry. I'm sorry. I don't know how Tyreek Hill's on that team come opening day with all the crap he's dealing with. And then the Jets, there's part of me that thinks that Aaron Glenn's building something, and then there's part of me going, it's the Jets. They'll screw it up. So I'm not saying anything about them. I'm waiting until the season starts and we see, hey, where does it go? Do you screw it up, or do you finally do the thing that Jets fans have been wanting to do for 15 years and make the damn playoffs? And then the Patriots, look, I'll say this. I think they could get to 6 wins. I think 6 to 8, I think is probably what I would expect from them, just because that's, and if anyone's saying, oh, this is, it's me asking them to win 2 to 4 more games. That's not asking for a lot.
Yeah, so the Jets are an interesting one because I feel like more likely than not, that's just a bridge situation. They might win 6, 7 games or whatever, and then they're getting a new quarterback next year. There's always that little bit of hope in me that Justin Fields,
Succeeds.
has a little bit more in the tank. And I think it's interesting to look at last year with the Steelers, because I think that Russell Wilson definitely was a better passer than Justin Fields was in the time that he was in, and open up the passing offense. But you knew that inevitably that was going to crash and burn. It was going to happen. I don't know that things would have been any different with Justin Fields.
Yep.
I just don't know that it would have looked so so irritatingly predictable by the end of the year, because there's always that little bit of like, okay, if Justin Fields doesn't see the first or second read, he could just run and make something happen for you. And it's like, there were these weird times where it's like, yeah, well, Justin Fields being in the game is actually the best thing for your offense right now.
Yeah.
These little things that like don't make any sense, where it's just like, okay, he's in the game, he's going to run, and he still gets a first down. I think that, and again, like I look back at what he was like as a rookie, and I think that while the accuracy wasn't great and all of that, his actual play, his processing, his footwork, all of that looked like a guy who could become an NFL quarterback. Looked like a guy who could be better than what he ended up being. And I truly believe that those 2 years with Luke Getsy screwed him over something awful.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that. Now, at the same time, like, is he going to be the next Geno Smith where he becomes a plus passer later in his career? I just don't know that that's going to be the case. I do think, though, that obviously he's, won his, start against New England in 2022 and, pretty wild, just kind of stomped all over the Patriots back then. Like, you can't entirely scoff at him just when you're like going up against him one-on-one, because there are going to be a couple plays a game where you're going to be like, yeah, that's Justin Fields. Like, he missed that guy, or he took a terrible sack, or he fumbled the ball or whatever. And then there are going to be a couple plays where like, damn it, that's freaking Justin Fields. He ran all over you. Right.
Yep.
Or you just did something that like no one else in the league can do. And you're like, damn.
Me, October 24th, 2022. And I also say this about that game. That game was the downfall of Mac Jones. He should have never played in that game. That was his downfall.
It was over and done for him after that.
Yeah. Bill Belichick. That's when Bill Belichick pushed his development. Yeah. And then the other team I was going to say, go on.
No, I was just going to say I was there for that one. I wrote about it pretty extensively. Not a fan of that decision by Bill Belichick at all.
Neither was I. The other team in the NFC, there's one team in the NFC, though. I keep seeing what they're doing. They've been a bit of a laughingstock, but I saw last year, and I'm not here to say that they're going to be anything great, but I like what they're building, and I like their coach, and that's Carolina. I'm not saying they're going to be good, but, I can see it. Maybe they're that team where it's like, hey, 2026 or 2027 is when everyone's like, hey, maybe it's finally their time. Like, if you look at Chuba Hubbard, nice running back. Xavier Legette, weird eating habits, but pretty good receiver. And then Bryce Young, benching him may have been the best thing for him, if you think
I
about
thought
it.
he was so done when they benched him. I thought he wasn't going to play another. I mean, like, okay, like I figured he would play another snap because Andy
Yep.
Dalton, right? I mean, you're not going to, you're not really going to stick with him as a starter long term or whatever. But then he comes back in and he's like, oh wow, he's kind of nice now. Like
Yeah.
he's looking like he actually played better. You don't normally see young quarterbacks play better and look more like franchise quarterbacks after they get benched. It's usually bad, right? You're usually looking at like okay, as soon as they get benched, that's done. They'll come back. They might have a dead cat bounce here or there, for a game or two, but for the most part, they're gonna suck. Like no, like for the rest of the year, Bryce Young steadily got better. I'm interested. I'm invested. Let's
Yeah.
see it. I don't know. And again, like you're right. I don't think they're making the playoffs, but it becomes an interesting question because if Bryce Young plays well, like not like okay, but if he plays well in year 3, you don't pay him based off of that. But I think now you start having that conversation of like, dang, are we picking up his 5th-year option? Are we going to do this?
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking too. Like, like they're building some pieces. They're getting like the guys who want to be there. And like I think this year for them, if they go 5-12 to 7-10, that's viewed as a success in my opinion. Win a couple games you're not supposed to, and then
Mm-hmm.
like we say, Bryce Young, hey, throws for 3,500 plus yards, has a pretty okay touch. Like say if he has like 25 plus touchdowns and like under 15 interceptions, I think that's viewed as a successful season to where you pick up the 5th-year option.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to wrap up quickly with you with the Bears, just because I have a couple of things I brought up. One of them is I feel like for everyone thinking, oh, they could go get Ashton Genty. I just that I feel like that's like Najee Harris to the Steelers, where it's like you can do it, but don't do it. Where it's like he's nice, but do you absolutely? If they needed a running back, if they didn't have Swift, I would say go for it. But I feel like I agree with you. I think edge, offensive lineman, or if Mason Graham falls there, I think you take him.
I think to me, Ashton Genty and Najee Harris are not in the same realm.
Oh no! I just mean it's like for need over want. It was as
Yeah,
that's what I meant. Not the
yes,
same player. Not the same player. No. No.
it's true. Honestly, I'm glad you asked this because like this kind of thing like I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
So, for example, a team like the Patriots, even if Ashton Genty is like technically the best player available, right? At like, one of these spots or even in the top 10, like, no, you can't do that. But
No.
not just because he's not worth it necessarily, because I think that there are certain running backs that are worth that level of investment because they are home run hitters. They can catch the ball out of the back, they can do everything. You don't have to take them off the field. Right.
Yes.
There are certain guys that are worth that. And I think Ashton Genty is that kind of player. I do. But the Patriots cannot or a team like in their position can't do that. You have so many other problems that
Mm-hmm.
you're wasting Ashton Genty. So it's not even just that Ashton Genty can't fix all your problems. You're also not maximizing him because you need an offensive line in front of him that is going to go beat some ass and let him do his thing. Like so you have to have that part set up. Which is why Saquon Barkley makes the sense that he does with the Eagles, or signing Derrick Henry made the
Yeah.
sense that it did for the Ravens, right? Because you had the offensive line and you had the rest of the supporting cast and everything. And now it's just like, okay, well, damn, like what can we use to improve our offense? Our offense is already really good. Like, let's get a running back. I feel like with the Bears, it is an interesting question because obviously, like they probably are going to need a left tackle. I think Braxton Jones is fine. If Braxton Jones is healthy, I'm cool with that. Because he's an average left tackle. And honestly, average left tackle play is good left tackle play by default in the
Yes.
NFL. I think that Braxton Jones is a fine left tackle. And then you have a fine left tackle with everything else you put there in front of him on the offensive line. And it's like, okay, that's nice. And the thing with the Bears is you have that. You already have the receivers. You've got DJ Moore and you've got Roma Dunze.
Yeah.
You've got Cole Kmet. And yeah, you have DeAndre Swift, but I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like DeAndre Swift doesn't move me. I'm
No.
not that. I don't really account for him that way. I personally think that I would heavily consider Ashton Genty to the Bears at number 10 because I think that they like 2 months ago would not have said this,
Yeah.
right? But they are now in a position having revamped the offensive line and put Joe Tooney and Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson in front of them. Now you're in a situation, and Darnell Wright, who is a road grading MF, you're now in a situation where that kind of pick makes sense and you can maximize that. And it
Or
also takes
justify it.
pressure. And you've got your cheap, quarterback still. And you can kind of load up in that way. And he's so NFL ready. I still think that there is I think if he's available, I would heavily consider that. Is it the biggest need they have? No.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you do the stuff that you do in free agency, or at least for the Bears, so that you can take the best player available. And if the best player available is Ashton Genty, it makes more sense now to take him than before. But to your point, if you want to go the second round route, there's a deep running back class.
Yeah.
There's you might get Quinshawn Judkins. Really like that guy. I don't think you'll get Omarion Hampton now because I think he's going to go in the first round because people are in love with him right now. So which I don't know how I feel about that. I think that he's an explosive runner, physical specimen. Don't think he catches the ball well enough for that, but that's me personally. But you're going to be able to get a second, third round running back and a pretty good one. Now, will they be as good as Ashton Genty? I don't know about all that.
Yeah. That's
But
the $1 million question.
but the value proposition is, would you rather use that pick in the first round on another premium position like edge, like tackle, and then spend on a running back later on? Now, the thing I would say this year, though, as opposed to other years, at number 10 overall, I don't know that there is actually a tackle or an edge that I would actually rather take than Ashton Genty. So that's how I would leave that one.
I agree. And I'm not saying here, don't draft him. I just looked at the Bears and I was like, it's not, if it was an immediate concerning need, like DeAndre Swift wasn't there. And I'm not here to say DeAndre Swift's
Yeah.
like, God's gift of running backs. But if they didn't have him, that's when
Yeah.
I would kind of go like, hey, you go for Genty. But if they go a different route, I understand it. Like the Bears are kind of in that situation with the draft where there's a multitude of ways they can go. And I feel like most of the fans would be okay with it. Before I wrap up,
I feel like I could see them going with like Shamar Stewart or like something like a really polarizing
I think it's
edge,
gonna be really nice.
pissing everybody off.
But he's a dog. I honestly think Shamar Stewart's gonna have a really good NFL career.
I hope so, man. He's got all the tools for it.
Yeah. Before I ask you one last question, there's only one other thing I have to say, and that's to thank you because about 2 months ago, I was sitting on the sectional right behind me, stressing my ass off to watch Canada win the Four Nations face-off. And who's in my DMs messaging me? This man right here, as I am just a nervous Rex. I got to say my thank you and give you your flowers for that one, my guy.
I'm always there. I'm always there for you, bro. That was a sick game. I love that. I'm not even really a big hockey guy, but I mean, that was obviously like, a Cold War level affair. And I don't know, there was a little bit of Schadenfreude going on there at the time, but no need to get into that. Everybody would be like, don't get your politics in sports.
They kind of did it to themselves. I'm just gonna say that the Team USA did it. That's all I'm gonna say there. But the only other question I have for you is, because I know it's a hot button issue, Kevin Warren talked about this at the owners' meetings. Are you Lakefront or are you Arlington Heights?
I feel like I love the lakefront. I'm partial to the lakefront. I think I'm always going to be more about that. I think that Arlington Heights is better in terms of like what it would actually mean for the Bears franchise, because you would own that land, you'd own the stadium, you'd be able to kind of do, like a Robert Kraft-ish level thing, like what he's doing in Foxborough, right?
Yeah.
Where you have all that control. Lakefront would still be, at least partly owned by the city, would not be fully owned by the Bears, so it's worse from them from that perspective. But in terms of access, like, I don't want to freaking drive all the way out to Arlington Heights. I want to be able to take the train, right?
It's
Screw
far.
that.
Like, I didn't realize this until like Google mapped it. It's far. Like, it's like an hour
Yeah.
and a half.
Yeah. And again, I'm not in Chicago, so this doesn't affect me. But if I were there, I'd be like, yeah, I want to be able to walk to the game.
Yeah, because I was, and I know some people are like, oh, Dome, this. Chicago's the one team where I respect the Dome because they will get a Final Four. They will get, I think they do get a college national championship too. They would
I
get a
mean,
playoff
and
final.
literally, this is it, right? It's like getting a domed stadium would change the freaking game for Chicago. Like they would get Final Fours, they would get Super Bowls, like they would get everything, which is a boon to the area. So I think that in terms of just the actual business, you should definitely go to Arlington Heights, as just from a fan perspective. Like for the most part, be like, man, I would rather be able to like be there, and just like get to the game easily. Then again, that most likely you're going to build a sick spot over at Arlington Heights. I think ultimately that's where it's going to be. They're trying to play each other, right? They're trying to leverage stuff, but let's be real. They can get it done at Arlington Heights. They're going to get it done in Arlington Heights.
Yeah, like that's my thing too. But like even like we said, there it goes. The Dome Stadium for them makes sense because, like I said, you're getting Super Bowls, you're getting Final Fours, you're gonna get a college, you're gonna get a natty too. I only say a natty because I feel like they want to go to more, they want to stay in the more southern climates as we've seen. They'll probably get, I don't know what if they UFC would draw there, but from my perspective as well, something like a WrestleMania as well would go to Chicago because I know, look, wrestling in that city is synonymous. So there's just from a business perspective, that's where the Dome makes sense. Meanwhile, a place like Buffalo, look, football's meant to be played outdoors. It's just for Chicago. It's a city thing because Chicago is one of the biggest metropolitans in the United States of America.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to be super. I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways it could be in a similar level of impact across the sport with like the Boston Celtics getting sold, right? Now, like so many things could hinge on that. I think that
With
Chicago, yeah, so like the Celtics getting sold now, all of a sudden, like cascades, like, oh, we're gonna expand the league now that we've seen how much revenue we can get from like a franchise like the Celtics. We could be talking about like 10 to 12, $billion more revenue by bringing in two new teams or whatever it is. And I feel like being able to put a Super Bowl in Chicago with the level of city that is, I think the NFL's got to be like, yo, man, let's do it because it's going to be sick.
Yeah, and I just wonder too if the Bears will be sold eventually, just with Virginia, like with Virginia's passing. That's just another thing. That's a question for another day. It's like what the Seahawks are going through after Paul Allen died, and that was almost over 6 years ago already. So we'll see eventually, but for right now, it seems like Ted Phillips is the man leading the charge. But he's leaving it
Yeah.
to the Kevin Warrens, the Ryan Poles of the world to figure out how to bring winning football back to Chicago. Because if you want to see what Chicago is like, go back and watch the game from December 26th in a meaningless raining outdoor game that was 6-3. That stadium was full with a capital F.
Chicago fans don't play. I think they can kind of get skipped over sometimes when people talk about best sports fans in the league. But I feel like they need to start being talked about on there because, man, they are up for some punishment and suffering. You got to give it to them.
Oh yeah, except for hockey, the Blackhawks have won enough recently to where they're fine in that
Yeah.
standpoint. But
Yeah, but then they're over here like, having like sexual abuse scandals and stuff. Like there's still some suffrage going on.
there is, but they won 3 championships in a 5
Yeah,
year
they
period.
they won. They did win. You got to give
They
it to them.
yeah, I do. But anyway, guys, the draft is done. Khari and I, we chatted it up. We had a great time as always. Sir, it was a blast getting to talk to you again. We'll have to do it sometime after the draft. If you have any last words before we go.
Um, get your draft plans ready. Get your Twitter fingers ready, and get ready to be pissed off because you probably will be.
One way or another, no matter where you are, the teams are going to be pissed. You're going to be pissed off. You're going to hate your team, but in
I'm just gonna
September,
laugh. That's
yeah,
that's the thing that I feel like I always gotta laugh. That's my thing.
yeah, I'm going to do the same. Like when I see people getting mad, it's like, well, they don't do this. I'm like, guys, it is still April. That's the thing I love about the draft being 4.5 months from the start of the season. It's not like the season starts in 6 weeks from now. No, the season starts in like 20 still weeks away. We're still a long ways away from actual football games being played. But that's what the offseason for. It's for fun conversations like this. And that wraps up episode number 355 of YWC Football Talk.
Mm-mm-mm.
We'll see you guys again very soon because you know what? We're less than 10 days away from the NFL draft. For Khari Thompson, Griff, have a good night, everybody.